Meditation and water are wedded forever. As everyone knows, meditation is the most intimate thing, and water the most expansive. The sea is everything. It covers 7/10 of the terrestrial globe. Its breath is pure and healthy. It is an immense desert where man is never lonely, for he feels the stirring on all sides. I love the sea, or should I say, I love looking at the sea, to see its vast expanse and its spirituality somewhere under the depths. I really like looking at the sea. In the past, maybe I could have been a sailor, a sea captain, but I don't think I would have liked the drudgery getting up to that rank of sea captain. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and this is my Week 7 wrap-up for the Read What You Own Challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 25,000 pages before I buy another book. I will provide a link in the description of this video where I set out my goals, ambitions, and rules for this challenge. I am calling this Week 7, but it is really Week 6 and 7. I went on a 7-day cruise in the Caribbean just last week. So 3 of these days were travel days where my wife and I were driving to Florida. So I did not get a lot of reading, neither a physical book or my Kindle, but I got a lot of audiobook listening done on this trip. So I'm just going to wrap up these 2 weeks and call them Week 7 and let the critics be damned. So what did I read? I made some vlogs on my trip. If anyone is interested, this is what a cabin suite with a balcony looks like on the Norwegian Prima. It is a little bit larger than most cabins, as I understand. I've not actually seen any other cabins on this ship. But this has a lot of room to relax. It is also the quietest part on the ship. And it is really my favorite place to just sit down and read. I would be remiss if I did not show you the scene from my stateroom. I am standing on the balcony and looking out at the great sea. And if I hold this down, maybe you can see some of the wakes of the ship and see a little bit of the command tower from my balcony. I am on the 14th floor. And this is what the actual balcony looks like. Here I am on my 3rd day of cruising on the Norwegian Prima. I am somewhere in the Atlantic, crossing over probably into the Gulf of Mexico in a couple of days. I'll be landing port in Jamaica tomorrow. But I did want to give you an update on what I have been reading. A few days ago, I finished for my Cthulhu Christmas event, Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. Of course, this is a short story that I have read many times before. Arguably, it is Lovecraft's best short story. It is probably his best, as it is his most influential, and it started off this whole Cthulhu mythos thing that if the introduction to my book on short stories by Leslie Klinger is second only to Frankenstein. I don't think Cthulhu is quite that famous, but it is still a magnificent piece of short horror fiction. It is basically divided up into 3 sections, where you have a narrator who is investigating something one of his elderly relatives was working on. papers about the cult of Cthulhu. And there he has a small piece of stonework depicting this hideous creature, part man, part octopus, with little wings. You don't get a whole lot more description of Cthulhu than that. And then it stretches out into other branches of the story where the narrator is interviewing people who somewhere down south were interviewing a cult of Cthulhu. Wild, crazy, Cajun people. I think that's how Cthulhu called them. They were not Caucasian people in his story. So there's a little bit of Lovecraft's racism right there. Then there is the third part of the story, which is the notes of a Norwegian sea captain who encountered something very strange in the Pacific Ocean. A city, an island, has risen from the sea. All the shapes, all the geometry of its structure is completely against what humans would normally recognize as regular structure. And of course, they're going to encounter something on this island. But what makes this really sort of magnificent is that it allowed Lovecraft to change our views of what is in the universe. What are these monsters from beyond the stars? Are they evil gods? Are they monsters? Are they just very strange beings with a very long lifespan? I really like the short story Call of Cthulhu. As I said, it's probably his most famous. But is it my favorite? I live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and the port of departure for my cruise was Cape Canaveral, Florida. My wife and I decided not to fly down because flying is just a pain in the patoot. We decided to drive, taking 2 days to drive from Virginia to Florida. The total trip is about 12 hours long, so we needed something in the car to entertain us, and we listened to the audiobook We Solve Murders by Richard Osman. Richard Osman is more famously known for his first novel, The Thursday Murder Club, which is a bunch of retirees in a place in England solving cold case murders. It was wildly entertaining, but very lightweight. In We Solve Murders, it's also highly entertaining and very lightweight, but in a good way. You were introduced to Amy. She is working for a private contractor that provides body protection of famous people. She's assigned to protect an elderly novelist who's rather racy, rather sexy, rather opinionated, but she is a best-selling novelist. She has sold 60 million copies of her books. And she had the unfortunate mistake in one of her novels to insult a Russian oligarch with his real name in the text. And this Russian oligarch decides, I want this lady novelist dead. Therefore, Amy is assigned to protect the novelist until her bosses can reach an agreement with this Russian oligarch not to kill the lady novelist. But there's more troubles. The company that she works for provides protection for a lot of people, and some of the protection they provide for are internet influencers, mostly on Instagram. And a lot of their clients, or not should say a lot, but 3 of their clients have turned up dead, murdered under strange circumstances. So it turns out that sooner or later, someone is trying to kill Amy, and she does not know why. So she takes the lady novelist, and they flee and go on the run. Amy involves her father-in-law, Steve, who is an ex-police detective out in England. Steve is enjoying a private sort of retired life in England, solving very simple detective cases, looking at the CCTV footage to find thieves, finding lost dogs, that sort of thing. Very relaxing, no stress at all. But Amy involves Steve in trying to find out who is trying to murder her, who has murdered the clients of her business. And this novel is filled with lots of wonderful, quirky characters, just like the quirky characters that I encountered in the Thursday Murder Club. And I'm also going to say this is really kind of a cozy murder mystery. There are murders, but you don't get to see the murder up close and personal. And there's a lot of hitmen going out to kill Amy, to kill the lady novelist. And you get to know some of these hitmen. You know something? You wind up liking these hitmen. They're not evil people. They just get paid to kill people. I know, that's probably a contradiction in term, probably not true to life, but it's good enough for this novel, We Solve Murders, a highly entertaining novel to listen on a 12-hour road trip from Virginia to Florida. The novel was about 10 hours long, so that left just a little bit of time for just driving, which was perfectly fine. If you like these kind of cozy mysteries, We Solve Murders is pretty good. I also finished rereading The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson, originally published in 1952. In this short story, there is a small-town deputy sheriff in Texas. He has a man who has some business dealings, and these business dealings are not going quite as expected, and he has to kill this man. This deputy sheriff is also involved with a prostitute in this town, and this small-time deputy sheriff says, maybe I can make this prostitute and this bad businessman do a murder-suicide together. Wouldn't that be a grand idea? And why he does kill these two people, this plot to make it look like a murder-suicide, not quite perfect. And this poor deputy sheriff has to kill some more people. That kind of thing. This is a classic of noir crime. It is one of Jim Thompson's most famous novels. Is it his best novel? I don't know. A lot of people say it is. Pop 280 is another great favorite of mine by Jim Thompson, but I have not reread that one in many years. I think I'm going to have to, because I did enjoy my reread of The Killer Inside Me. I hope the waves do not cause sound problems in editing, but the view is just too beautiful to ignore. So I'm going to try to record some of my wrap-up out here on my balcony. So the first book I want to talk about is King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard, originally published around 1884. This is a book I'm actually supposed to read in January, for Haggard January, but I wanted to get a little bit of a head start reading Haggard. And this is the novel that Haggard wrote, according to legend, on a bet. I'm not sure who he bet, but someone bet him that he could not write a novel as exciting as Treasure Island. And he accepted that bet, and he wrote this novel really fast, and it really is a magnificent old-time adventure novel. It is a story of Alan Quatermain. He is out in Africa. He is a big game hunter, and one day someone approaches him to help him find a missing brother who disappeared into the desert. And it just so happens that Alan Quatermain knows a little bit about this man's destination. He was trying to find King Solomon's Mines, the legend of a fabulous lost treasure. And so Alan Quatermain, two other Europeans, pack off to find these lost mines. They have to cross a desert of 150 miles on foot, or with horses or camels, or whatever kind of animals they were using. I don't quite remember. And it's an arduous journey across the desert. This is the 19th century, and it's a long way to go for a very hot place. They had lots of trouble getting there. Once they find this oasis, they're going to find a lost tribe of Africans. And things just get more trouble there. And they eventually do have to find these lost, fabulous treasure. This is really an exciting novel. I enjoyed reading it very much. It took me about 2 days. Of course, I started it in the afternoon of one day and finished it in the afternoon of another day. So maybe one day if you have a lot of dedicated reading time. So really a lot of fun. I think I'm going to enjoy some other Alan Quatermain novels, or I should say other H. Rider Haggard novels that I will be reading in January. The one thing about this novel is the very last chapter. It was just a little bit too quaint of a wrap-up for me, but that's the way people wrote in the 19th century. And it really didn't spoil the novel overall. I have just finished rereading The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. This series has 5 books, of which I've only read the first 3. That was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and Life, the Universe, and Everything. I want to complete reading the series, but it's been a while since I've read the books, so I decided to reread the first 3 books and then go on to Mostly Harmless and Thanks to All the Fish, although I may have those titles reversed in series order. This follows Arthur Dent, a mild-mannered Englishman, for Prefect, an alien living in England from Beetlejuice, and then the President of the Galaxy, Zepha the Beetlebrox, and Trillian, also a British woman. These novels are called science fiction, although they're really a parody of science fiction, and I find them absolutely hilarious with their sly and gentle British humor, although he does dig some really deep cuts in some places. And this is just a wild tale where Douglas Adams will throw everything in the kitchen sink at the reader, and somehow he makes it stick. Really a lot of fun. On audio, I have listened to Flashman at the Charge by George MacDonald Fraser. This is the 4th book in the Flashman series. I have read most of this series in the 90s, and I'm slowly working my way through the series again. Although this time it seems that I'm going to be doing them as audio books and not reading the print editions. Flashman, if you do not know, was a very minor character in Tom Brown's school days. He was the school bully, and George MacDonald Fraser has expanded upon that character and made him into a Victorian hero of sorts. Although Flashman still has his bully tendencies. He is a coward. He is a womanizer, and he will flee any battle at high speed if he gets a chance. Although it just so happens to be that he's put in situations where his cowardice is mistaken for bravery. And in this book, Flashman is sent to the charge of the Light Brigade, that famous poem by Tennyson. Ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do or die. I may not have that quote exactly right. And true to form, Flashman is quite brave in his attempt to flee in the charge of the Light Brigade. But he gets captured by the Russians. And this all happens roughly in the first third of the book. So this book is really not a whole lot about the charge of the Light Brigade. It is about a different campaign in Russia than in Afghanistan, where the natives want to overthrow the Russians. And this book has one of the most famous scenes. It's with Flashman fleeing over on a troika in snow, and he's being chased by Russian bandits. Not bandits, they're the Russian guards, and he has to throw things off the troika to lighten the load. It just so happens he's taking a lady Russian with him, who he has just had a romantic relationships with, and he decides, she weighs 100 pounds. She can go over the side of the troika to lighten the load. That is the sort of man Flashman is. And I found this book absolutely hilarious on my reread. I think a lot of people would enjoy it. But you have to start with just Flashman, the first in the series. On my Kindle, I finished Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud, the first in the Lunar Gothic trilogy. This is really more of a novella. It is about 90 pages long, so it doesn't quite count as a full book. And this is a really rather bizarre story. I don't know if this is fantasy, science fiction, or horror, or maybe just a jumble of all 3. It starts off in 1923. There is a woman named Veronica. She is married to a prosperous medical man, a surgeon. But Veronica has mental issues that the surgeon, does not know how to cure. And in this world, there were moon spiders on the moon, and all the moon spiders have died out. But you can go to the moon for medical treatment, especially psychiatric medical treatment. And her husband is delivering her to the moon to be treated. He does not think the treatment will be successful. And then she meets the Dr. Call, who says, I can cure you. They have threads of the deceased moon spiders that have medical properties that are not quite in the natural realm. And from there, this book just gets utterly bizarre. As I said, science fiction, fantasy, or horror. I'm not sure. Did I like it? Yeah, I kind of liked it. Was it absolutely fabulous? No, it was not absolutely fabulous, but I'm kind of curious to see where this story can go in the second story of the trilogy, because I thought there was a rather strong ending at the end of this story. So I will probably eventually have to seek out the rest of this trilogy just to see where this author is going with the story. I read 3 more stories in my Cthulhu Christmas project. The first, Ex Oblivione, really isn't a short story. It is more of a prose poem. I listened to the audiobook. It is just under 6 minutes in length. And this was a story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote when he was 30. He was thinking about oblivion. He was thinking about his career, or lack of a career, as a short story writer at that time. And he imagined how wonderful oblivion would be, because it would take you to a dream world where you could encounter and experience anything. H.P. Lovecraft later expanded this idea of dream worlds into the Dream Quest of the Unknown Kedeth and some other short stories. This is really not Cthulhu mythos. This is not horror. This is pure fantasy of the mind. But as the introduction by Leslie Klinger says, it is Lovecraft pondering what it would be like to go into oblivion, to take drugs to take you into a dream world. Not really what I was expecting from H.P. Lovecraft. I reread The Color Out of Space. This is H.P. Lovecraft's personal favorite short story that he wrote. And it is about a meteor that crashes somewhere in New England and turns a whole heath into a gray, dead land. It is Lovecraft at his finest. It explores a truly alien being. This is no Martians with ray guns or anything like that. This is not Vulcans or Romulans or anything from Star Wars. This is a truly alien creature that the human mind cannot really understand. It is described, as in the title, just a color from space. A color that does not fit into the human spectrum. And what does this color want? What can this color do? This is where the horror of the story comes in, because the alien may not know what it's doing. You don't get to know as a reader. But as a story by H.P. Lovecraft, this is one of his finest. I will be discussing this with Michelle once I get back from my cruise, because we're sort of reading H.P. Lovecraft stories together this month. The Rats in the Walls. This is one of my personal favorites that Lovecraft wrote. It is the story of a New England manufacturer who learns about his family ancestry out in England, and that there's an old, let's just say, castle that his family used to own that has fallen into ruin. He has lost his wife, he has lost his son, but there is this place in England that he can buy rather cheaply, or should I say, restore. And he goes to England with his cat. This cat, unfortunately, has the name of a racial slur, so I will not repeat that. And the name of the cat may be holding back people's interpretation of this story because it can be offensive when you listen to it or read it upon the page. But in this home in England, his cat hears sounds in the wall, and this man can hear sounds in the walls. Other people don't hear these sounds in the walls. And on his land that his family used to own, there was some sort of mishap, some sort of tragedy that gave his family a bad name. Apparently, his house was built on old Druidic ruins that are older than the Romans. And of course, this man is going to discover not quite the origins of the Druidic temple, but what lies beneath the temple. And the end of the story is so creepy. Is the narrator of this story completely bonkers, completely mad, or is there some ancient horrors that dwell beyond the realm that people know and under the ground? A great, great short story. The last day of week 7 was a very long road trip. My wife and I disembarked the ship in Cape Canaveral, Florida at 7:45 a.m. and got home to Fredericksburg, Virginia just about 9:30 p.m. So a very long day driving, but we got a lot of audiobooks done. Together, my wife and I listened to Britt-Marie Was Here by Fredick Backman. In the paper edition, it is about 352 pages long. It starts off with a woman named Britt-Marie. She has recently separated from her husband, and she is very concerned that she's now living alone, that she will suddenly die, and that no one will notice that she has died. So she decides that she needs to get a job. She has not worked since 1978, and it is presumably contemporary times, so now she is a middle-aged woman. She goes to the Swedish Unemployment Council and demands a job quite vigorously. Britt-Marie is probably somewhere on the spectrum. My wife and I were talking about that after listening to this book. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to go into those psychological details, but she has some issues with her life. She likes arranging things very carefully. She likes cleaning things with baking soda. So the unemployment office finds her a job in a small town in Sweden that has fallen on very hard financial times. All the jobs are leaving, and she is given the job as a caretaker for a rec center. This rec center is technically closed, but she's assigned to be its caretaker. However, she gussies it up, and she finds people that actually need the services of a rec center. The youth of the town want to play football, and they are forming a football team, and they go, Britt-Marie, why don't you be our coach? Now, Britt-Marie knows absolutely nothing about football. And the kids say, you don't have to know anything about football. You just have to sign the form and show up at our games and say you are our coach. And now Britt-Marie gets convinced to do this job, even though she doesn't know what she's doing. And suddenly, this small town where everything is closing down starts finding life again. This is sort of like a hallmark of Bachman's books. He takes these very quirky, very lovable characters and puts them in very difficult situations and shows that these odd people are very human and worthy of our attention. This is a very cozy book. My wife liked it a lot. I kind of liked it. And if you like these cozy, feel-good books, Bachman is probably an author for you. I also snuck in some H.P. Lovecraft audio stories. The Terrible Old Man, about 5 pages in length, about an old sea captain with mysterious bottles and some thieves who think this old man has value in his house. Oh, those poor thieves. And I listened to The Unnameable which is about 8 pages long. And this is about an ancient house where there was rumored to be something hideous that lived there, something unnameable. It spent a long time gazing out of the attic window, so long that its reflection was etched into the glass. Okay, not great science, but a good story. And then I listened to The Hound, about a bunch of grave robbers digging an ancient grave somewhere, where was it, the Netherlands, and they find an ancient statue. But the inhabitant of that grave really was not too happy about its statue being stolen. The Unnameable and The Hound are not the best Lovecraft stories ever, but they're a lot of fun. Just before leaving on my trip, I finished the audiobook version of Silver Pigs by Lindsey Davis. Yes, I listened to the audiobook, and I'm holding up the paperback copy because I have a paperback copy that only cost me 85 cents. This is a detective novel set in ancient Rome. How can a reader resist a detective novel in ancient Rome? Those are two great things, and do they go well together? Yes, they do. The narrator of this book is Marcus Didius Falco. He calls himself a private informer. And that's just an ancient way of saying private detective, although I have my doubts about there being real private detectives in ancient Rome. But let us suspend our disbelief. One night, Didius Falco is approached by a young woman. She is about 18 years old, and she is in possession of a silver pig. A silver pig is just a huge chunk of silver that takes a few people to carry. It's supposed to go to the treasury belonging to the Roman emperor. But these silver pigs are being smuggled out of the English mines, or say the mines in England. And after this, murder occurs. And Didius Falco has to go to England to solve this murder crime. What a lot of fun. There are more novels in this series with Didius Falco, and I really need to get them, either in a cheap paperback like this on audio. Okay, that's everything that I read for week 6 and week 7. It was a total of 2,454 pages. That brings my grand total up to 7,643 pages. And if my math is correct, I have completed 30.5% of my challenge. Woo-hoo-hoo, I'm getting there. I'm a little bit behind where I wanted to be. I wanted to be a little bit further along, but life just gets in the way of reading sometimes. Let's see what happens in week 8.